Hey, folks. SunsetLakeCBD.com, our favorite sponsor here at the Majority Report, is excited to release the first two products of its brand new functional mushroom CBD line. Focus and Relax. That's right here. Oh, this is the Relax, and this is the Focus Gummies. The Focus Gummies contain a blend of lion's mane, cordyceps, and CBD to help you with attention and mood. And the Relax Gummies contain reishi mushroom, ashwagandha mushroom, and CBD to help you better manage stress and ground yourself. I need both of those. I've got them. I'm taking them both simultaneously. Folks, these are great. I had a bunch of these, the Focus gummies the other day, and they were great. They taste great. But I don't know. I think I felt a little more focus. But these, the Sunset Lake CBD gummies have been an integral part both to not only my relaxing and my focus, but also my sleep. These have melatonin in them. And they, of course, also have, which I have been partaking in, some with THC. And so they've got all sorts of gummies, and they've got, of course, the just the sour gummies with the CBD. Check it out. But here's the exciting part. If you head to SunsetLakeCBD.com right now, you can save 30% on all Sunset Lake CBD gummies with the coupon code MUSHROOM. Plus, if you spend over $99, you can choose to add a free 20-count jar of the new gummies to your order. As always, Majority Report listeners can get 20% on everything else in the store with the coupon code LEFTISBEST. But now is the time to go and get and try these new gummies and even try the old ones. The sale ends at the end of the day on December 26th, so don't wait. Head over to SunsetLakeCBD.com. Take advantage of this deal. Grab yourself some new functional mushroom gummies. See their website for terms and conditions. Great company, great product, and right now, a great sale with the coupon code MUSHROOM. And now, for the show.
With Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, December 18th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Diane Winston, professor of journalism and communication at the University of Southern California, author of Writing the American Dream, How the Media Mainstreamed Reagan's Evangelical Vision. Also on the program today, Israel killing of 3 hostages in Gaza exposes Israel's lies about protecting civilians. Meanwhile, Israel's allies politely ask for restraint, and Netanyahu, with the Israeli polls showing his political life ends with the end of the Gaza slaughter, says, noted. Also on the program today, Pope Francis okays priest's blessing for same-sex marriage. Senate racing to negotiate away asylum rights and broader immigrant rights to close Ukraine aid package. More polling with more bad news for Joe Biden. And speaking of bad news, Rudy Giuliani liable for $148 million worth of defamation, which, if you're wondering at home, equals 7,400,000 of those cameos he'll have to produce to pay for it.
You better get to it.
Florida, I'm good for 4 of those.
Oh, yeah?
So it's down to 700,399,096 cameos.
There we
Better
go.
get cameoing.
Florida Republicans boot their chairman over rape allegations and or his thruple.
Thurple is maybe close to third nipple, is what you were thinking of?
As thruple. Sorry about that.
Thurple.
With his Moms of Liberty wife. New report, Clarence Thomas made directed complaints and appeals for more money as a justice shortly before Leonard Leo introduced him to multiple billionaire benefactors. The FTC.
Friends.
Yeah, friends. New friends. Friend in need. FTC wins a major antitrust ruling against a giant biotech firm. And the Department of Transportation issues a $140 million fine versus Southwest Airlines for its delayed flights in 2022. And lastly, U.S. homelessness grows by 12% in this country, highest level ever. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. It is, as Emma Vigeland says,
Fun Day Monday.
Fun Day Monday. Did I say Pope Francis? Is it not Pope Francis?
I thought it was Pope Francis.
Yeah, it's Pope Francis. I mean, I think.
Yeah.
This has been a new one.
Oh, I
you're a
guess I
resident.
understand. Somebody on the IM said, on the program today, Pope Francis.
Oh, that would be.
And
Yeah,
that's,
I told him to call in.
Yeah.
in the fun half.
You
That
have
was
the
a,
Catholic line, right?
I misplaced the comma, I guess, in that situation. It should have been on the program today, comma. Pope Francis does something. He's not going to be on today. Not today.
Not
He's
today.
not filling in for you.
Yep. And he's not going to be visiting the show. Folks, thanks for joining us, and congrats to someone amongst us. We being
I mean,
Republican,
legally
I bet.
married.
I got legally married on Friday.
That's what it means to be married man about.
Yes, it does.
you didn't even have to play that.
I have to-
Now you've got it down.
Well,
was good,
the battery died over the weekend, so I have to do
That's
it
a good
manually
volley,
now.
Matt.
Congratulations, Bradley.
Thank you.
He's got a real glow about him. Let's with new polling has come out of swing states that show Joe Biden not faring particularly well. Third-party candidates are doing well. There's 4 of them in these polls, and at this point, they're appealing more to soft Republican, lean Republican voters who would have voted for Joe Biden in 2020. And as you know, Joe Biden won the election with about a total of 40,000 votes. I think it was over 3 different states. Those same states may not be the same ones that are in play this time, but nevertheless, the last 2 elections have been decided by 110,000 votes over the course of 3 states in each of those 2016 and 2020. Because of the nature of our electoral college. So very small margins and very small leakage, as it were, of voters deciding they're not going to vote for Biden this time around and they're going to vote for a third party, or I think in very rare circumstances they would vote for Trump, but it's more often than not just not voting for Biden.
Or not voting at all.
Or not voting at all. Although, it's unclear from these polling, what people are going to do in that situation. And of course, we're a year out. Nevertheless, a year out, here is Donald Trump. And granted, he is at peak needing to motivate Republican base voters. And I don't know why I say necessarily granted, because that should be just as disturbing as what he's saying. He is well in the lead in New Hampshire and Iowa. So I don't think that you can assume that this is extremism for attention as much as it is him and the people who will be voting for him. Here is Donald Trump, and this was on Saturday in Raleigh, at a rally, I should say, in Durham, New Hampshire. And this is the type of rhetoric he's doing. And we should also say, as he's saying these things, Joe Biden and Democrats in the Senate are negotiating away things like asylum rights and other immigration rights, which just gives you a sense of how much this country has moved to the right on immigration from even the days when George W. Bush was trying to forge comprehensive immigration reform. When Democrats abandon the fight for political expediency, as they did in many instances over the past 10, 15 years, this is what happens. And Donald Trump was a brief respite from that slide, but less so from politicians and more so just from voters. But here is Donald Trump in Durham, New Hampshire.
Destroyed our country, and we're going to make it great again, greater than ever before. And there's nothing I can do that's going to top that. I've had plenty of the other life, right? We've had plenty of the other life. We got a lot of work to do. You know, when they let, I think the real number is 15, 16 million people into our country, when they do that, we got a lot of work to do. They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, all over the world. They're pouring into our country. Nobody's even looking at them. They just come in. The crime is going to be tremendous. The terrorism is going to be, and then we built a tremendous piece of the wall, and then we're going to build more. And the election was rigged, and we... I
mean, he's just going through a laundry list. He's obviously lost on his teleprompter. But poisoning the blood of our country, if that sounds familiar to you, then you're familiar with some of Hitler's writings and speakings. And he's talking about deporting all of these immigrants. And he wants to make it clear it's not just the 2 or 3 countries that you think of in Latin America, Central America. He also wants to make sure that you're thinking about African and Asian immigrants as well.
Yeah. Do we have this? I sent this polling that this Michael Kagan put up here, and speaking about kind of like the incongruous nature or the inconsistent nature of how Americans view immigration. And this is a pretty small poll. It's a Fox News poll, but this discrepancy, I think, is borne out just, anecdotally in what I'm seeing. When this question is posed, allowing illegal immigrants who have jobs in the United States to apply for legal status, 62% favor, 36% oppose. Then ask them this question, deporting immigrants who are living in the United States illegally back to their home countries, 67% favor, 28% oppose. And, that means that there is a wild discrepancy in, or a huge gap, a vacuum being left where the American public doesn't really understand what immigration policy really means and what a humane path forward would be. And because the Democratic Party for the past, when they're in power, I guess, Obama tried to move forward with some reform, but at least the Biden administration has just completely abandoned this topic. It leaves a huge gaping wound, an opening, a vacuum for fascist rhetoric.
Oh, it flatters their premises. Bill Clinton the entire time in the 90s was looking at how much, actually all their attacks are false. Look at how much we've spent on border security. Obama, like you said, tried to do the reform, but actually just became the deporter in chief. And yeah, like all that time, and Biden, once again, granting the premises. Oh yeah, we'll look at Title 42 again. The Republicans had to get Title 42 under the pretense that there was a global pandemic and we had protect ourselves from disease, and now we're just putting that back on the table.
And to be clear, what I read from those polls is that not just that people don't understand our immigration system, they also have a completely twisted notion of who immigrants are.
Yeah.
The idea that, I mean, go back to that first graph, or poll, I should say. Allowing illegal immigrants who have jobs in the United States to apply for legal status. 62% want that to happen. Yet, in the next question, they say deporting immigrants who are living in the United States illegally back to their home countries favored by 67%. What people don't understand is the massive percentage of undocumented immigrants who are in this country who are working.
Yeah.
And certainly who would work if they were allowed to. The perception is that you have all of these millions of undocumented immigrants in here just to get on the really cush and luxurious dole in this country of food stamps or Medicaid. And this is just a twisted perception about who essentially the undocumented immigrant population is. And there's an opening, like Emma says, the size of a bus to drive through. It's not going to be easy, but sustained over time education by political parties, in this case, the Democratic Party, as to who immigrants are, forcing in some ways, you obviously can't force, but you can certainly direct the media narrative.
The Republicans do that all the time.
Well,
I mean, the Democrats just have no understanding
they don't
of what
want
to do.
engage in that fight.
Well,
in the
Biden's
same way
just reacting.
Yes.
And but there's no. What's the long-term strategy then on immigration? Because,
there is none.
Because we're gonna cave to get Ukraine and Israel money over the hump without conditions for Israel, as they have killed 20,000 people in 10 weeks, because you're reacting to polling where the right is says that you're not tough enough on the border. Well, there's no oxygen being given to some sort of counter narrative for why the Democrats are better on immigration because of how these policies have not worked. It's crazy to me. There's no strategy.
During 2010, in the run up to 2010, the Obama administration started pushing for austerity in the wake of the financial crisis. And at the very least, the Biden administration learned at least one lesson there, that you've actually got to, when the economy is in crisis, you actually got to spend your way out of it. The Obama administration, specifically at that time, was saying stuff. The reporting was that the president doesn't believe that we shouldn't be spending money, but he also doesn't want to expend political cachet on teaching people that that's not that austerity is not the appropriate response. So you heard a lot of belt tightening rhetoric, and the austerity came in. It gave us an incredibly slow and anemic recovery that took almost 10 years to get to rebound in terms of employment. We lost millions of homes to foreclosure. Many people think that's why Donald Trump was even remotely positioned to be able to win in 2016, that there was a growing dissatisfaction. And of course, we saw how easily the notion of austerity and deficit reduction could be jettisoned. And
Trump did it first
exactly.
with the first round of checks during COVID. It's incredible. The Democrats only abandoned that
he also
belt tight.
did it even before then with massive tax cuts.
Sure.
In building the deficit. They weren't going to. There was no more talk about the deficit. Paul Ryan was the last one who was maintaining that fiction, and off he went, and that was it. So we'll see. I don't know what the Biden campaign can do to deal with these things, but certainly alienating more parts of his base over this does not seem to be the most, I think, intelligent move, at least from a political standpoint. and certainly from a policy standpoint. We'll talk more about this well into 2024 and early into 2024, I imagine. Meanwhile, a couple of words from our sponsors. In just a moment, we'll be talking to Diane Winston, author of Writing America, Writing the American Dream, how the media mainstream Reagan's evangelical vision. Speaking of holiday season, it's happening right now.
It is?
Yeah, we don't have our War on Christmas thing, but great gift idea for you. This is actually a doubly great gift. It's a great gift in and of itself, even if you actually had planned what gift you were going to get in advance for your parents, for your grandparents, even for your kids. And I'll tell you why. But it's also great because it is digital. And so you can provide this gift. It is a really great gift, but the first part of it's digital. So you can sign up for this up until the last minute. You want to give a gift to your loved ones that makes them feel special and unique, and also keep you and them in mind throughout the year. That's why you should give everyone you care about Storyworth. Want to thank Storyworth for sponsoring the Majority Report today. And also thank them for offering $10 off to your first purchase. If you're a listener to this program, at storyworth.com/majority. Storyworth is an online service that helps you and your loved ones preserve precious memories and stories for years to come. This is great. I did this years ago. They advertised for a while, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. But what it is you sign up for this. They will send questions on a weekly basis to whomever you gift this to, your grandparents, your parents, uncles, aunts. Frankly, like, I would send it to myself and give it to a gift to my children. They'll appreciate it more as they get older. But Storyworth will email your relative or friend a single life-related question that you pick from their collection. Some of them are innocuous, some of them are clever. It's like, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? Or what's the farthest you've ever traveled? Or what was your favorite car? If you could wake up tomorrow with a superpower, what would it be? Things like this that you wouldn't think would necessarily, they're just not that terribly complicated questions. But because they're not intimidating, people tend to answer them, and you never know where some of these stories are going to go. And then what happens is Storyworth compiles these answers over the course of the year and then puts it together in a book. And you can put pictures in and whatnot. So with Storyworth, you're giving those you love a most thoughtful personal gift from the heart and preserving their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/majority, save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/majority, save $10 on your first purchase. Also good for a gift. And something that people will think about you every day of the year, more or less, if you're healthy, when you give this gift. I'm talking about a Hello Tushy bidet. Wiping doesn't make sense. Well, it doesn't make sense at all once you've used a bidet. But if you think about it, you get dirt on your hands. You don't just take a dry piece of paper and wipe it off. No, you use water. And that's, you can give yourself the ultimate clean and turn your bathroom into a personal oasis with the refreshing stream of clean water from a Hello Tushy bidet. Folks, I'm telling you, use a bidet once, you will never go back. It is amazing. It's a totally different experience. You go, you turn the dial on the water, shoots up, cleans your bum, you pet yourself dry with some toilet paper. You use like 80% less toilet paper, and you feel better, cleaner. Hello Tushy attaches to your existing toilet. You don't need any, electricity, or you don't need a plumber there. It has a patented self-cleaning smart spray and a buildup resistant design that helps you minimize grime buildup, and even has antimicrobial knobs, making your weekly cleaning chore a whole lot easier. But it's super easy to put on your toilet. If you know how to change out your toilet seat, you know how to put on this bidet. It'll take you about 10, 15 minutes tops. Super easy. And it is, in many respects, life-changing. Every Hello Tushy bidet comes with a 30-day hassle-free return and a 12-month warranty Join the over 1 million real pooping humans who have made the switch. Hello Tushy is offering our listeners an exclusive limited time offer, 15% off your first bidet order, plus free shipping. Go to hellotushy.com/majority for 15% off of all bidets. That's hellotushy.com. Enter the promo code majority at checkout. See the site for details. We'll put the link of all our sponsors on the YouTube and podcast descriptions and at majority.fm. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Diane Winston, professor of journalism and communication at the University of Southern California, author of Writing the American Dream, How the Media Mainstream Reagan's Evangelical Vision. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Want to welcome to the program Diane Winston, professor of journalism and communication at the University of Southern California, author of her latest, Writing the American Dream, How the Media Mainstream Reagan's Evangelical Vision. Diane, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here today.
So let's start with something that was a big surprise to me, because I turned 18 just in Reagan's second election and missed by voting against him by 3 weeks. And what really surprised me about your book was learning that he was as religious as he was. I had no idea, and that was certainly not the way that he was portrayed at the time, as far as I can remember, at least in the communication that I received. I feel like other people were receiving different communication about him, but he wasn't. We talk about that for a moment.
Well, Sam, I think you were receiving the communication most people were, because the media saw Reagan's religiosity as basically a ploy to win voters. They said he never went to church. He didn't show any signs of religiosity. So reporters tended to think of him as opportunistically religious. However, if you go into the records and the history, you will see that he had a very long-standing connection to Christianity. When he was growing up, many of his friends thought he would become a minister because he was so engaged in his church. And after he left the presidency, there was a letter that reporter Karen Tumulty found in Nancy Reagan's possession that Reagan had written to her father when he was on his deathbed, when her father was on his deathbed. And basically Reagan said, I know you've been an atheist all your life, but if you don't embrace Jesus, you will be in hell forever. I will not see you again. Please reconsider. Please become a follower of Jesus. That's not verbatim, but that's what the letter said.
And we should just be clear. The letter wasn't written after his presidency. The letter was found after his presidency.
I think the letter was written after his presidency, but it was found after his presidency.
Okay.
And that's a pretty clear indication of someone's religiosity.
Yes, I would imagine. And what I understand the sort of like, I mean, he was at least twice divorced, I think it was, and he was from Hollywood at least at one point. And so there's this sort of perception that he wouldn't be religious. But how did his message of religiosity get to the right ears, I guess is the question.
Well, he was a hard sell to some conservative evangelicals because, as you say, he was divorced. He was from Hollywood. And most of all, he had been president of a union. He'd been president of the Screen Actors Guild. And he was a pretty good Democrat until that time. So he had a lot of convincing to do. He began that when he ran for governor of California, and he began to talk about his evangelical bona fides. He went to a very conservative church in LA, and a lot of those folks began letting it be known that he was born again, he was saved, and that he would be a good Christian politician.
What was the? Talk about Jerry Falwell and the moral majority, which had really started to gain steam, I guess, in the years in which he was in California as governor, and even in his first run for the presidency. They were like, how did that relationship develop there? Like, I mean, if the media was out there with this notion of Reagan as not a religious person, that he was, more sort of like coastal in his sensibility, how did the message get communicated? Because I'm comparing it to like Donald Trump, who's also a coastal figure, who also multiple divorced, also does not appear to be religious. I also happen to think he's not.
Yeah.
But Mike Pence ended up being the vehicle for bringing along those people, when needed. For George W. Bush, he was a self-proclaimed reborn, and they used marriage equality to establish his bona fides. How did Reagan do this in a way that reached the evangelicals who were only then, around that era, at least, in the late 70s, starting to enter into the sort of like what had been prior left to Caesar was no longer only Caesar's purview?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Sam. Most people don't know it, but Jerry Falwell also had a church in Orange County, California, and he had known Reagan for a while. Falwell initially was not supportive of Reagan when Reagan was governor because Reagan did not clamp down on abortion like Falwell had hoped. But subsequently, Reagan began becoming more outspoken about his conservative evangelical policies. He was a strong law and order governor. He cut back welfare here in California. And I think that after the debacle of Barry Goldwater in '64, Republicans knew they needed to put a friendly face on their conservative policies. And Reagan began barnstorming the country, talking to a lot of groups through his General Electric connections, going to churches, and he managed to convince evangelicals. One of the big turning points was when he spoke in Dallas to a large crowd of Southern Baptists and other evangelicals and said, I support you. I'm your guy. And his sincerity got through to them. And at that point, they were so desperate to get someone in there to repeal Roe versus Wade and to return prayer in school that they were willing to go with what might have been an unusual candidate at a prior time.
You write about how the media sort of both ignored or put a more benign face, to the extent that or maybe even ignored Reagan's personal religiosity, but ended up like creating a narrative that was imbued with this religiosity. Can you talk about that and tell us what religious imaginary means?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, but the media is an important part of the story. And I sometimes think I have trouble getting that across because the media is still the vehicle to tell the story. A friend who was a reporter at Time magazine when Reagan was running the first time said that Henry Grunwald, who was ahead of Time then, told the staff, "We've already killed 3 presidents. I don't want to do a 4th." In other words, he was very well aware of the fact that Carter, Ford, and Nixon had all been slammed in the media, and the media bore responsibility for all their falls. And he didn't think doing that to Reagan was a smart idea. So that to me is key in terms of how the media covered him, because at that point in time, we did not have the many outlets we have today, and media followed each other. So if Time was doing something, you could pretty well be sure that Newsweek and New York Times and Washington Post were doing it all. Reagan seemed to many of them like a sweet older man, genial, cowboy type. They weren't going to go after him in the same way that they had gone after his predecessors. That's number one. Now,
and can I just add, just so for the context for people who are watching the program who are all younger than me, Time magazine was the pinnacle. I mean, the New York Times were certainly up there too, but Time magazine, we have no analog in today's media landscape to what Time magazine and Newsweek was. Newsweek was sort of like like following, almost like comedically following Time, but it was also quite big. I mean, Newsweek was big, but Time was, that was it. It was the center of the news media. And this is in an era when we had 3 news stations that were at 6 p.m. every night, and that was it for an hour, half hour, depending on what it was. And then the New York Times, and that was basically it. That's where 95% of the population got its news.
Exactly so. And if the head of that organization was basically telling his reporters, go soft on Reagan, because we don't want to be responsible for the 4th president's decline, that is a major deal. That you're exactly right, Sam. It's hard to understand today because there's not the same kind of media monopoly and media gateposts. And as I said, Reagan was depicted by the media as this genial older man who smiled a lot and made gaffes. And they had stories about him that, they would tell, but they really didn't understand what was going on underneath, which was this, as you say, conservative turn that he was perpetuating in his rhetoric, which the media itself picked up. So if he said something like the Soviet Union is an evil empire, which was something he said in a speech in March 1983 to the National Association of Evangelicals, most reporters didn't really talk about that because they thought it was like really weird and stupid, and they didn't know how to put it into a news article, like who calls the Soviet Union an evil empire. But his evangelical conservative followers totally got what he was saying. He was saying that we are in a cosmic struggle with communism. Communism is our ultimate enemy. And we as Christians need to fight a system that's anti-God, anti-capitalism, and anti-democracy. And to some extent, that is how the message got to evangelicals, because they had ears to hear what secular people might not have.
I want to just add too, about the first point about Reagan getting treated with kid gloves. They called him Teflon Ron at that time, exactly. Where nothing would stick to Ronald Reagan, but nothing would stick to Ronald Reagan. What became a self-fulfilling prophecy, and there was no attempts to make anything stick to Reagan. And also, it's also amazing to hear the idea that calling the Soviet Union an evil empire was so anachronistic then, because the idea of calling our enemies evil now is almost like no one doesn't do that. Right. Like at the time, people have to understand that things had secularized in civil society in such a way that good, evil, no, there may be our enemy, they may be, but you don't use that religious language to describe these things any more than you would, I don't know, some weird sports metaphor or something.
Exactly. And that's why the phrase was not quoted in most articles, in most television broadcasts, until, if at all, the very end of the piece, where, they kind of threw it in.
Talk more about he began to appeal, because this is in 1983. the 1984 election happens, and by all accounts, at least the political, the professors I had in college, on day one we started, and they talked to us and they said, you've just witnessed a realignment of the voting electorate in 1984, and that was his reelection. And talk about like what was involved in that turn, and then we can get to sort of how his notion of like these three, or his version of the three freedoms, which is more of like a trinity of freedoms.
Exactly. Basically, after World War II, we had a political consensus around a welfare state. And FDR had put the New Deal into play. We basically were a country that was getting more and more prosperous. We believed that the economy could help everyone thrive and become more comfortable and lead a better life. That ended in the 60s and 70s for a variety of reasons, including the war in Vietnam, the counterculture, the creation of the birth control pill, women's liberation, the growth of Black power, the beginnings of the economy going offshore, and finally the oil shortage that was precipitated when we aided Israel in the 1973 war. And as a result, the oil countries cut off our supply of oil, which caused a lot of financial distress and a lot of long gas lines. So by the mid-70s, people were pretty fed up with everything. And one of the reasons they looked to Carter for change was because he promoted himself as a practical businessman. Things only got worse under Carter, and they culminated with the Iranian hostage crisis when the Shah was dethroned and Iranian militants took Americans hostage. I realize now that I have given enough history to make viewers want to either run to their history books or to YouTube to catch up on everything that went on during that period. A lot went on, suffice to say. And by 1980, voters were ready for someone to say, all this shit is past. We have to put the country back together. We are going to make America great again. That was Reagan's slogan, which Trump took. Make America great again. Reagan promised to turn the country back to something wonderful. And people wanted to hear that message. And I believe that was partly why the media was so gentle with him, because they saw this was a message that America needed. Now, for Reagan, that message was predicated on fulfilling God's role for Americans. Reagan truly believed that God blessed America with freedom. He truly believed that God wanted Americans to be free. And over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, and I point to 1983 as an example, he put these messages into his policy statements. And one good example is his desire to cut back welfare. He said he wanted to cut back welfare because he wanted to cut back taxes. He linked the two. But he had another reason for cutting back welfare, which was he believed people should take responsibility for themselves. Part of being free was taking responsibility for yourself. And so the two, cutting taxes, taking responsibility, were linked for him. Now, for people who are religious, they could hear the religious idea of taking care of yourself. For people who weren't religious, they could hear cutting taxes, saving money. And that way, a religious message could intertwine with a pragmatic message and thus gain favor with the population. Does that make sense?
It does. And we should just also say, though, this also coincides with the sort of continuing backlash from the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, and the idea that welfare was, and he did a lot to do this, was turned into something that was largely appreciated by Americans to something that was only for black people. And he gave us the welfare mom and the pink Cadillac or something. I can't remember exactly what he had said. And then, of course, we also know that he opened up his 1980 national campaign near the Neshoba County Fair, which was the site of, or right around the corner from the site of where 3 civil rights workers were famously killed in Mississippi. So all of this stuff, he's sort of managed to reach all of these constituencies with religious language that we, just as the non-religious, speaking for myself, we're not coded to understand that.
Exactly so. Yeah.
And how did that fit into his rhetoric on the Soviet Union as well? The doublespeak for religious people. You touched on it earlier, but just these notions of evil connected with communism and the lack of religiosity versus the religious evangelical vision of capitalism in the United States.
Yes, yeah, that's right, Emma. He very much believed, as I said, that God blessed America with religious, economic, and political freedom. And he saw the Soviet Union basically as an evil empire because it denied people the ability to worship or to be religious. Communism was a contradiction of capitalism. There was no free market. There was no individual property. And it was a totalitarian state. People had no ability to vote for their leaders. So for those very reasons, he believed communism had to be destroyed, which is kind of amazing if you think about it, because, by the end of his term, the Soviet Union was over.
Yes. We should also say, and you mentioned him, General Electric, in between his role as a SAG president, General Electric hired him to go around and basically campaign against universal health care, and intertwine that this message of anti-communism with the idea that, like, if people get health care, we're going to get that. But talk about those trinity of freedoms, as you call them.
Well, political freedom is pretty clear. It's the ability to vote for candidates, to express your political ideas, to have a voice. It's democracy. Economic freedom for him.
Didn't it also, though? I mean, you're right that also involved limited government.
I was going to.
Okay,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say economic freedom meant freedom from government regulations.
Okay.
Which the limited government, yes, that's part of the political freedom, but it's also a very big part of economic freedom. That a free market was not only what we think of as a free market, but it also meant you and I are free to have the government off of our backs when we want to create our own businesses. So economic freedom meant limited government. Reagan believed the less government, the better. In fact, one of his best known quotes is, the 9 words most Americans fear is, I am from the government and I am here to help you. He believed that the less government, the better. Now, his idea of religious freedom was not what you or I might think it is. It's more the idea of religious liberty that conservatives are pressing now. And that is to say, if you are a religious person and you do not want to serve gay people or make them a cake for their wedding, you do not have to do that. So religious freedom to Reagan meant you were free to have your religious ideas and act on them, despite the outcome to others.
Religious law trumps civil law in this instance. I mean, for all intents and purposes.
Yes. I mean, in this realm. Right. I mean, Reagan wasn't talking about a kind of Sharia, but he was talking about.
Well, he was talking about Christian law. I mean, he was specifically talking. I mean, like what it is. I mean, if they had the opportunity to impose covenant marriages on all of us, I have little doubt that they would. I would little doubt that Speaker Johnson wouldn't impose covenant marriages on everyone. If they had the ability to, have the government in many respects penalize people for divorce, they certainly would penalize people for having sex out of marriage. I mean, 6 years after Reagan leaves office, no less, 4 years, Patrick Buchanan is out there chastising, Murphy Brown, a fictional character, for having a child out of wedlock. Or was that Dan Quayle? I think it was Dan Quayle, actually, who was George Herbert Walker. I mean, this was their mentality. And in many respects, for the individual practitioners, their Christian law trumped civil law in this instance.
Yes, but I find it deeply ironic that I am sitting here defending Ronald Reagan, because I did vote in those elections, and I was deeply depressed when he was elected, and even more depressed when he was reelected. So I have to say, I don't think that Reagan would have been on board with Mike Johnson. I don't think Reagan believed in. Mike Johnson talks about a biblical republic. I don't think that's what Reagan ever had in mind. In fact, if you look at what he did, he was much more concerned with the political and economic sides of the religious argument than the social ones. He was more interested in getting rid of the Soviet Union and getting rid of government regulations than he was in repealing Roe versus Wade and getting prayer back in school. So Reagan did begin the shift that has given us Mike Johnson and Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And for that, I will forever hate him or dislike him. But I don't believe that their politics would have jibed with his. And I pray that he would have been calling them out, as Liz Cheney.
Well, let me ask you about that, because I mean, I can accept that his personal politics may not have been where Mike Johnson's were, but when we elect a president, we're not just electing the president, right? And he is building this coalition, and he doesn't just have to say to these people coded things that they will acknowledge. When it comes to staffing and when it comes to putting people into position, and I'm thinking like Ed Meese, who was the attorney general, who started going after pornography. Now, I don't know that Ronald Reagan himself personally cared about pornography. When you have a surgeon general who's basically waving off the burgeoning AIDS epidemic, and the Reagans themselves sort of like being seen as like whatever, but a whole apparatus that is refusing to respond to an epidemic. This is a function of, regardless of what he believed personally, it wasn't enough for him to say, we're going to staff this administration with people who are not going to go after pornography. We're going to staff this administration with lawyers at the DOJ who are not going to go after voting rights. We're going to staff, our healthcare system with people who are going to actually take this seriously. He did the opposite.
Sam, you're totally correct. He was a conservative. That's why I didn't vote for him. That's why most people I know didn't vote for him. That's why I didn't like his presidency. And that's why I had a lot of problems with those 8 years. The fact of the matter is that I've come to realize there are bad conservatives, and there are even worse conservatives, and there are really terrible, scary conservatives. And, that is a sad commentary to make on our politics, because in retrospect, as many horrible things that Reagan administration did, it pales in comparison, I think, to what we're looking at today, which is a true repeal of our sexual freedoms, of our personal freedoms, of our democracy. So, I'm not extolling Reagan. I'm just saying that it got a lot worse.
How did we get from there to here?
Reagan legitimized a I was talking earlier about that welfare state consensus. Reagan legitimized a move away from that to a more market-oriented philosophy. And basically, the market is not ethical. The market is not humanitarian. The market doesn't care about people. The market cares about money. And that sort of mentality is what drives our country today. And that, I think, because Reagan kind of swathed it, he wrapped it in religion and spirituality, and he said cutting taxes is doing good for the poor because you're making them personally responsible. Because he said that, we should fight enemies who don't believe in our views. He legitimated a way of thinking that instead of bringing people together, I think begin to polarize them and pull them apart.
It's interesting because I think, you can look back at the Carter administration and certainly see deregulation and, bringing in, I think it was Volcker, and anti-unionism, a burgeoning anti-unionism that was happening there. But my sense is it wasn't trumpeted as a value in the same way that it was with Reagan, and that Reagan made it sort of almost like a full-on aspirational value.
Right, and that's because Carter's Christianity was a more communal humanitarian type of belief than Reagan's. Conservative evangelicals are very much about individualism. You are saved because of your relationship with Jesus. I'd like to save you, but it's your responsibility to get saved. And that sort of emphasis on individualism is part of the vision that Reagan instituted. It's okay to be about yourself. It's okay because you're taking responsibility. It's okay because, it's your life and your freedom. And it's important to remember that many of us in this country who are not tremendously religious don't take religion seriously. But I believe that people need a vision for their politics, because if we're all going to be members of the state, pay our taxes, stand in line, we have to believe that there's some greater good to what we're doing. And part of the reason for Trump's success is because the Reagan vision is no longer holding, and people are angry and frustrated, and they want something to believe in. Now, unfortunately, what I think a lot of the conservatives today believe in is just tear it all down. Let's get rid of everything. That's their vision. That's a scary vision. I mean, Reagan's individualism and market philosophy was detrimental enough. Tearing the whole place up is really scary.
But that's like, it seems to me just a matter of degree, right? I mean, the Reagan guy, once you say the 5 scariest words in the language are, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Traveling from there to, we should get rid of government and tear it all down doesn't seem to be a huge sort of, those two sentiments seem consistent. One may be more dramatic than the other, but once you get to one place and you realize that government is not here, it's not helpful, it's an obstacle. The idea of getting rid of it, deconstructing the administrative state, as Steve Bannon said that they were doing in the first Trump administration, seems to be the logical conclusion.
You know what? That is really smart, and I'm going to use it, because that shows the line between Reagan and Trump even more clearly than I had stated it. But yes, that's exactly true. Unfortunately, it's not a good idea, right?
Oh no, yes, I agree. I agree. It's a bad idea. But I just want to also just like, where is the media now in your perspective? If the media at that time was hands off Reagan because essentially there was a sense by the elite, we need to settle things down. We've had a decade essentially, and maybe a decade and a half. I mean, coming into 1980, assassination, resignation, the guy who pardoned the resigner, he's out. Jimmy Carter, the malaise it was called, and sort of like the vulnerability of America with 450 days of hostage taking, held by Iran every night. Ted Koppel's going on television, counting it down or clocking it. And the elite who control the elite media in this country, and there was almost no other media, when you're talking about national politics, than the elite media at that time decide we need to have stability. So we are going to largely support this president through everything he was saying in terms of his campaign, and then ultimately into Iran-Contra, if you ask me. Then like what did the media continue to do when they adopted this rhetoric or they adopted this framing or didn't call it out? Like, how did it continue?
At the same time that all this was happening, much of the media, which had been in family hands, began to pass into corporate chains. And families tended to be rooted in the community and know their community, whereas corporations began to look more at the bottom line. Part of what was happening, therefore, which also helped Reagan, was that USA Today, the USA Today response. USA Today, which came out during that first term of Reagan's, totally changed the way people looked at the news. USA Today was news for television. It was bright, light, colorful, graphic, short, peppy, happy. And its success kind of took newspapers away from the hard-charging, investigative journalism into being more happy, friendly. Now, the change of the newspapers to become more happy, friendly, and the consolidation of newspaper chains basically stopped a lot of breaking stories and a lot of criticism of Reagan and the government. And as you said, when people did criticize Reagan, oftentimes it didn't stick. In fact, after the Grenada War, when reporters began saying none of this stuff really was as the government told us, no one even believed it. No one even cared. They bought the narrative that the government told them that we had won that war. Now, flash forward to today. We have so many more options. We have so many more newspapers, but it's increasingly driven by this market sensibility of how many eyeballs do you have? How many ears do you have? What do people want to hear about? And what we've seen over the last couple of years is people love to hear about pussycats and car crashes. And Trump has really benefited from this by making himself a sensation that media want to report on. The big question to me is, do we want to continue with media hyping Trump the way they have been? Or would it be better to pull back on that?
I mean, that to me seems like a separate question. I mean, and I get the what happened with the media, and people I don't know will remember. I remember when USA Today first came out, people were very worried that we were trivializing news. In fact, USA Today now is actually not is a much stronger publication in my mind. But at that time, it was specifically for prior to things like Instagram and TikTok and social media. It was set out to appeal to a smaller attention span. But also subsequent during that time, Reagan changed the telecommunication, or I should say, Reagan got rid of the fairness doctrine. And there was a loosening. Clinton really did it more so, but there was a loosening of ownership requirements and really a change in the media. And that also, over the course of that next 10 years, news, which used to be a lost leader, became a profit center for the television and whatnot. But I guess I'm most interested in the adoption of a religious framework in the way that we communicate and how this language entered into our lexicon without any alarm bells going off, it seemed like.
What do you mean by religious lexicon?
Like the idea of talking about, to throw off and say blank is evil, evil of Axis, to go from when Reagan says it's an evil empire in the 80s to 20 years later when Bush can say evil of Axis, and that becomes acts of evil, rather. The idea of using religious coded terminology in our politics without sort of anyone saying, hey, wait a second, in any type of without the mainstream media having any sort of awareness that was happening, seems pretty astonishing to me.
But I think that you just hit on it. The mainstream media is populated by a lot of people who aren't tremendously religious and who don't understand religion. And they don't care about it. They think it's superstitious. They think it's stupid. And so to them, when they see language like that, they use it only because they think it's so dopey. And they are kind of showing oh, Jerry Falwell, he says, God is punishing homosexuals. Isn't that great? Because our readers will think, these people are buffoons and idiots. So the media has circulated and normalized that kind of language because they thought it was something readers might enjoy, that people in New York over their breakfast coffee would read about this and, oh, darling, can you believe there are people who actually think this way? So I think they normalized it without understanding the power of it. Bottom line.
Interesting. I mean, but at the same time, it's also important for us to be aware of it, right? I mean, this stuff is going to take place in those circles regardless. And Jerry Falwell is going to reach all of Jerry Falwell's flock, whether, me sitting at the breakfast table reading the New York Times, on the Upper West Side, am aware of it or not.
Well, exactly so. And one of the examples in the book I think is most telling. I talk about the AIDS crisis, and I talk about how Falwell became a proxy for Reagan, since Reagan didn't say anything about it. And the media began adopting Falwell's framing of the crisis, so that when Newsweek finally did a cover story that purported to tell the truth about AIDS, their language was punishment, retribution, discipline. I mean, they basically took Falwellian terms to tell their piece. Now, they weren't necessarily adopting Falwell's critique, not at all. But Falwell had sort of set the stage for thinking about this crisis as not only a medical crisis, but a moral crisis. And I think sometimes the media hears things, and people in the media hear things, and they think that readers will respond to them without really thinking about what the upshot of their choices might be.
Interesting. Diane Winston, professor of journalism and communication at University of Southern California, author of Writing the American Dream, How the Media Mainstreamed Reagan's Evangelical Vision. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Sam, and thank you, Emma. It was a pleasure to talk with you both.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program. Just want to remind you, in an hour I can't do the math. At about 2:35 p.m., so about an hour and 14 minutes, 13 minutes, we will be on, by we I mean Emma and I, on the American Prospect 8-hour telethon.
Yeah.
We're
going to try to get us both on at the same time. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, nevertheless, we're going to appear.
Yes.
And if it's just one of us, then Emma will be on after ESVN. But I think we're both going to be on. So check it out. The American Prospect is a great publication. I support it both as a member and full disclosure as a donor. Not a big donor. I don't, like David Dane's never personally thanked me.
I mean, even if you don't read it, you could still, give them some money because you're probably reading it through listening to our show because of how much raw material they provide to us.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I really don't think that there is a better outfit reporting on sort of the policy aspects from a left of center, and I don't mean that that it's close to the center, but I don't know that it's necessarily. They're critiquing the policies based upon the efficacy of these policies, with an outcome wanting more leftist policies, and
they do it from the word wonky is overused, but it's a wonky public in terms of like they go into the nuts and bolts of all of the policy and they don't leave any kind of stone unturned.
It's just a great, and it's also one that I think influences at least some people in the White House. The way it works and I think all administrations is some less than others in terms of running the gamut of the personnel that are in there. And everything is siloed in terms of like foreign policy and then, domestic policy and different areas in domestic policy. But the people who are advocating for the policies that you like, they are getting their ideas and I think often giving their ideas to the American Prospect and using, I think there's a certain symmetry in terms of like building outside support. And you'd be surprised at how little outside support it takes when you're talking about those type of arguments that take place in the White House.
You have one staffer that puts a Matt Iglesias blog on President Biden's desk, and you have another that puts a David Dane piece on.
Exactly. Which is why often I think you see them on Twitter sort of going at it a little bit.
Interesting. Interesting.
But so check it out. Join us there. You will. I don't know what we're going to be doing, but I will not be. I will try and do my best not to cough. I still have a cough from last week. I was sick last week. I think people know that. I mean, and so when at one point, like I just hit some
threshold.
Once a night now, I have a coughing fit.
Oh.
Yep.
All right.
And then it goes away.
That's pleasant.
Yeah. Folks, it's your support that makes the show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercial, you get the fun half and all sorts of other great things. So help this show survive and thrive. Become a member today. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, you can gift the membership. Do we remember how to do that? What was it? Cucknation.org? Or what did... oh my God. Didn't
are we still paying the...
I don't know if that was, but you can gift a membership. Just simply.
I'm gonna go use the work computer to go to cucknation.org.
I think I can't remember what Ronald Reagan had did something like that. Nope, that's not it. Yeah, I do not do that. Do not do that. But you can gift a Majority Report membership by going to looking for the gosh, I don't even know what it is. It's poor business ship on my part. We'll find that out. We'll announce it tomorrow.
Good.
We've only had it for like 10 years.
Okay.
6 years.
JoinTheMajorityReporters.com.
Well, jointhemajorityreport.com is where you go, and there's got to be a way to do.
Oh, you're trying to remember the Cuck Nation.
I'm trying to remember how you gift a Majority Report membership, but you can do that. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee. and featuring the Majority Report blend. So if you want to gift some coffee, justcoffee.coop, get the Majority Report blend, use the coupon code Majority, get 10% off. Emma.
ESPN, it's getting into the thick of things. I went 3-0 this weekend, no big deal. And then it was this weekend I was like, I'm going to be responsible. You know, it's Christmas time. I need to be buying. I just bought a bunch of gifts. Probably shouldn't use disposable income on gambling.
Palm starts itching.
Yeah, and like literally everything I thought would happen. So I guess that's how it works. But we talk about that, not just myself. The teams kind of separating themselves. I'll dance on the Cowboys' grave as well. YouTube.com/ESPN show today.
Matt.
Yesterday for Left Reckoning patrons at patreon.com/Left Reckoning, David Griscom and I spent about 20 minutes getting into Joe Rogan's talk with Stavros Halkias, comedian, where Joe's back on his the pandemic made people made people lazy, and Stav. It's very funny. Different approaches you get to being on Rogan. One is to like completely disagree. Like at one point, Stav says, "I prefer what you're saying is," which is like, I'm gonna agree with you, but say like, actually, I think the pandemic made people realize how badly they were treated by bosses. It's very, very funny. So anyway, patreon.com/Left Reckoning. Joe Rogan can't seem to have a guest on without wanting to rope them into his sort of like Steve Miller, Bannon-esque like right-wing bullshit these days. And I think it's a shame that comedians have to go through this sort of political acid test before they're allowed to promote themselves. But, you know.
What, on Rogan's show?
Yeah, on Rogan's show.
Well, he's only going to be interested in promoting comedians who have a similar disposition, I think, for the most part.
Well, it's like he does like a test of it.
Because
like,
right?
Stav's great. I really like Stav. I'm biased towards Stav. But they go through like 2 hours and 20 minutes of all just talking about comedy clubs, and stuff that I don't really understand how people who aren't in comedy give a crap about. And funny stuff like that's like kind of like wacky radio stuff. And then Rogan busts out is like, yeah, do you see what they're giving to migrants in Chicago stuff?
Yeah.
And it's got to be so jarring as a comedian to be like,
well,
how are you going to update on that? And he's just he's just read the.
Like, I think they're doing it because of votes.
Like, I think Stavros is more inclined to handle that, but that's why I thought it was so wild when Jim Gaffigan was on, because I was like, I don't think Gaffigan's really like
a political
as equipped
comedian.
To be like, Zuckerbucks, I guess.
Well, people should check out Stavi's stand-up on Netflix. I watched it already. Fat Rascal. Netflix is still producing crap for Amy Schumer, but on the other side, you get things like Stavros and his stand-up special. It was really great.
Folks, in the Majority Report app, there is a gifting membership link. So you can pick up the app, majorityapp.com, and there is a link in the and also you go to fans.fm/majority. Well, let's put it in the we'll put it in the YouTube and podcast link.
Nice,
and there you can get the link there, or it's in the Majority app. Gonna take a quick break. Fun half 646-257-3920. We'll turn on the phone in a bit.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow.
What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is it?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single frickin' day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go start life.
Libertarians.
They're so stupid, though.
Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35. 501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
Call it satire. Sam goes to satire.
On top of it all,
Yeah.
my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland. Fun half of the Majority Report. Not for nothing. No one's even noticed my haircut. Anyone in here?
I did
does not
notice
say
it
anything.
silently.
I did notice. I just forgot to say something.
Yeah, me too.
Still don't notice
I'm
it.
sorry.
It does look very good, though, Sam.
It's a little short for my tastes these days. But
Well, you look very professional.
I guess, I don't know. Nobody noticed.
Don't show people the hole in your sleeve.
What hole in my sleeve?
There we go, right on the elbow. Right
shoot,
there.
really?
I noticed every time you wear that shirt. Yeah.
Damn it.
It's been there for like 3 months.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not growing, so there's no reason to get rid of that shirt then. It's not growing. I could put like some, what do you call it?
Just put a piece of duct tape over it so it doesn't fray
I'm not
anymore.
gonna do that.
I'm joking.
But I could use like nail polish, right? Like clear nail polish.
To cover a hole?
Doesn't that sew it together?
Yeah, totally.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
just, Maddie Moron, just wanted to give a shout out to my beautiful fiance, Lucia, who is currently listening to the show on a closing stretch of a 10-hour drive to Memphis. In addition to being a big fan of the Majority Report, she also asked me how to find Chapo on Spotify, so she has joined the dozens of other Chapo girlfriends out there. JK, love y'all. Hit her something from the soundboard. All right, this is congratulations on that drive.